Route 66, I see it as a thread, a storytelling thread that connects Albuquerque, New Mexico with all the other Route 66 states and with other roads and streetscapes. It captures the imagination of people. We have visitors from all over the world. There are Route 66 groups, fans of Route 66 across our world. We have chapters of Route 66 associations in Europe and Australia, and it's really quite amazing. And I think, especially for out of town, out of country visitors, Route 66 is America. It speaks to what they think America is. But we also have people that simply lived on Route 66. Like, Route 66 was a main street for towns. And I think a lot of times that's lost because we have now these interstate highway systems. So where Route 66 ran through communities like Albuquerque here on Central Avenue, or it went through Santa Rosa and Tucumcari and Gallup and all of these small towns and villages, Route 66 was their main street. People lived on Route 66, their homes were on there, their businesses, it was their village, their town.
They serve as markers of the neighborhood or markers of your community for a lot of people who grew up seeing the same signs, and they grew up knowing, okay, when you're a child, you're orienting yourself in the world and you look for big things, that it's the Sandia Mountains, or maybe it's the volcanoes, and you're east or you're west, but maybe you're going through your neighborhood or different neighborhoods and you can pick out certain signs, and that helps you feel like you know where you are in a space. And I think over time, when we do that as children, you become more attached to those signs. It seems to say something about where you're from, your immediate neighborhood. Also, depending on what's depicted on the sign or what it's supposed to advertise, you adopt a familiarity, I think, with those signs and some sort of sentimental attachment to them. So for folks who no longer see the signs that they grew up with or that they remember, when they do see those again, or even photos, postcards, it's like a memory trigger. It takes you back to a different time in your life, and the city's history, the city's life as well.
We still have a lot of Route 66 sort of prime period buildings. They haven't all been torn down, and for many reasons, right? In some ways, we had economic depression, and in an odd, sort of ironic twist, sometimes that saves buildings just because they go maybe abandoned or low usage, and they don't get torn down. So we still have quite a nice inventory of Route 66 buildings in here. So it's great. They're all different styles. We have a lot of the more sort of mid-century modern buildings left, and restaurants and diners. We also have a lot of the courtyard motels. A lot of neon signage, it's very difficult to maintain. There are few craftsmen any longer in the United States that are really trained in neon sign maintenance and repair or development of new signage. They can be expensive. They get sold out of the country or out of its place, right? So neon signage, it speaks to the community so much. It's such a great resource for a community to maintain. But in some cases, it's just not possible because, of course, signs were commissioned for businesses. And businesses go out of business and they change hands, and you could get a new business in, a new owner that just simply, maybe it isn't appropriate for their new business, or maybe they don't have the funds to maintain it. It's expensive to maintain. They're delicate in many ways. So that is an enormous challenge for communities to maintain their neon signage. It almost needs to be a community effort.
So finally, in the 1980s, we have the highway interstate system, and we no longer need Route 66 to connect us from one place to the next. And by the 1980s, where it was finally like that last nail in the coffin, people then started to become much more nostalgic about it than they had before, where you have people going out and trying to preserve Route 66, beginning in the 1980s, certainly by the 1990s, where it's a piece of American history. It's that fulfillment of the American dream, right? That movement from the East Coast to the West to find American progress or to feel like you're living American progress. I think that road has signified a lot of different turning points in people's family histories. I think it's also important to think about the different things that were part of Route 66, right? More of the human story, the story of people who built the road, the story of people who built the signs, the story of people who, again, had to travel at various parts of the day or the night because there was a lot of discrimination. It's those untold stories that I think are also really important as to what Route 66 means, not only to the country, but to different families.
My name is Bob Matusi, and I used to work at pair of shoe stores. It's my grandfather's business, and this is one of the signs we had at the location at 3rd and Central. And this logo, I would guess the logo comes from marketing done probably in the 1920s or 1930s. From what I understand, there was 5 brothers that came over at the turn of the century, 1900s, from Italy. And like all good Italians back then, they had tons of kids. My great-grandfather was a shoe cobbler in the Italian army. So he came here and started a shoe shop somewhere on Central or First or something like that. That was my great-grandfather. My grandfather is the one that started the shoe store. He just sold shoes out of the shoe repair place. Albuquerque, I think, was a little bit different back then, and First Street may have had a lot of business back in the old days. And then they moved to 3rd and Central. That's where this store is, where that sign was. And that's actually, I don't think that's the biggest sign they had there. They had one side that was in front of the store that faced Central. And that one, I think, may be the one that faced the sidewalk. So it was a sidewalk sign. And then we left that location, I think it's like in the late 80s. We closed that store. We had 7 stores at one time. And we closed it, and we didn't take the signs. It wasn't, back then, it wasn't thought of as like, oh, it's a Route 66 sign. We should have thought that, but what happened is two women, and I guess I got really drunk one night, and I think they're in the sign business or marketing business or something like that. And they went up there and they stole the sign. And this again was didn't matter, we didn't own the building anyway. So the 2 of them took a sign, and then they got sober, like 10 years later. And they had this pair of sign. And they met my mother, and they said to my mother, and they became good friends, and the woman said, you know what? I stole a sign, can I give it back to you?
Pair Shoe Store wasn't unique. There was the Strombergs who had a sign on Central. There was the Fedway that had their sign on Central. There was, various stores that would employ, a lot of people. And local people did the signs. You didn't ship what you wanted to do out to New York or whatever. You worked with local people that knew about our community, that had some sort of attachment to our community, and they made the signs. There was like a community around shopping, going downtown to shop, to browse. You saw a community inside a store that was recognizable, that was the same, time after time. The store had the community of the sign painter, the salespeople that would support that community. I'm not saying it was like the perfect community and it was all rosy, but it was a community, and you don't have that community anymore. You have, signs that come in from who knows where that has no attachment to Albuquerque, and we have no attachment with them. So it's quite different. And so when those stores left, that part of, that also left, which was gigantic. It was really gigantic to have that gone. So not only did the signs go, but, that whole culture went too.